Okay, y'all, I'm going to forewarn you right now. Today's podcast episode, I am on a soapbox because I'm going to be talking about curriculums, namely comparing curriculums from today. Yes, this was my child's math book in public school, and curriculums from 1877. And when I compare them, it makes my blood boil. So we're going to get into that. And with that, let's get started. And welcome back. Okay, today I hope I'm not going to ramble, but I've got a lot on my head, and I want to share with you what's been going on in my head and in my world the last few months, because I think you might find it interesting. Maybe not. Maybe you'll be like, okay, I'm done with this episode already. But let me give you some context. So a few months ago, I decided I want to separate my personal Facebook and Instagram accounts from the homeschooling Facebook and Instagram accounts. And so I started a new Facebook and Instagram account called School to Homeschool Podcast. And one of the reasons I did that is because there was things that I wanted to talk about that people in my personal life, stuff about homeschooling. Like I wanted to do far more about homeschooling, but I knew it was frustrating for people in my personal life, who I'm friends with, to always hear about homeschooling, especially those who don't homeschool and will never homeschool. And that's fine, right? And then I started thinking, well, I also kind of want to separate for safety reasons, and things like that. So I started these new accounts. And so, by the way, if you try to join like Janae, the Janae.Daniels, which in past episodes, like find me on Instagram at Janae.Daniels, I've made that private. I've made my Facebook page private. And I don't post very often on those. But so I've started this public Instagram account. And because I wanted to post things that were homeschool and educationally related predominantly, right? And the other thing is, like, I kept finding, as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to post, one of the things that I noticed is a lot of the homeschooling influencers that are out there, not all of them, but many of them, though I really appreciate a lot of their stuff, it was really ugly towards public schoolers, and just some mean things were said, like, oh, they must not love their kids as much because, they choose to send them to public school and things like that. And it started to really bother me just because I have worked with so many people over the last, since we started homeschooling. Well, after about 2 years of homeschooling, I started helping people transition into the homeschooling world. And I've come upon a lot of moms and families where homeschooling is not an option, and they don't have a choice but to public school their kids. And in some cases, it's like emotionally, they're not in a place to homeschool their kids. Maybe financially they are, but emotionally they're not, which is okay, or they're emotionally there, but financially they're not in a place because both parents are working. They have, and they're out of the home, and they don't, it's not physically an option, right? And I try not to judge. And so I look at those moms, and I know their pain. I know their pain because they've told me how hard it is and how sad they are, and how much it affects them because they wish they could homeschool. And so as I've looked at some of these Facebook pages, again, well-intending homeschooling influencers, well-intending and good people, some of whom I'm friends with, and I know. But it alienates those who don't have an option. And so some of those posts started to really, really bother me. And I've even posted some of that stuff thinking, okay, that's what you're supposed to do, is you're supposed to post this stuff. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to start these other pages, but I don't want to attack the public schoolers, and I don't want to attack the teachers, because I was a teacher and my kids had amazing teachers. Were there some crappy ones? Yes, because there are some crappy teachers. Are there crappy teachers out there who just have political agendas on their docket in their classrooms? 100%. But I feel like those are the exceptions. They're not the rules. And I could be totally wrong about that. But with as many years as I had my kids in public school, I was one of those parents who got to know the teachers very, very well. And I knew what was being taught in the classroom. So I knew the goodness of these teachers. I even knew some teachers who had very, very, very extremely politically different opinions than me. And they were careful to keep politics out of their classrooms. Right. And so I thought to myself, I don't want to diss the teachers, and I don't want to diss these parents, because we are ultimately on the same team. And so I started this new Instagram account. It's doing good. But one night, and I was trying to figure out like how do I best post where I represent that we're on the same team, that we're not on different teams, because we are not. We all want what's best for our kids. And how we approach it might be differently. It might be different, but we want what's best for our kids. I have yet to meet a mom. Okay, I've met a couple who don't want what's best for their kids, right? There's very few in this world, I think. I could be wrong again, but most of the moms that I meet, like, they give everything for their kids. And many of them who do work are tired, and those who don't work are also tired. But we're on the same team. So I'm thinking about all of this, and I started reading the book. This is by Charlotte Iserbyt. It's called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. I've mentioned this on other podcasts. Like, I have deep dived into the history of the education school, the history of the U.S. education system rabbit hole, like deep dive. If you look at my shelf, if you could see the back in my shelf, you can see the 3 volumes of the history of the U.S. by Lawrence Kremen, which is like, when you read it, it's like reading a textbook and watching paint dry. Like, it's super dry, but I went through it. I've anything I can get my hands on about the U.S. education system, I will and have read. And I will continue to read as I find more, because it fascinates me, and it's disturbing, and it's bothered me. And anyway, so a couple months ago, I'm reading this book. So Charlotte Iserbyt was the senior policy advisor for the Department of Education in the Reagan administration. And she saw a lot of ugly in the Department of Education. And so she wrote a book, and it's kind of an interesting book, because it just gives, it's mostly quotes. It's very little commentary. She just goes through the history and gives quotes and says, this law was passed, and this person said this, and this book was published, and this is when it happened. And so I'm reading it one night, and it bothered me so much what I read. It bothered me enough that I even like delved into some of the people that are talked about, read some of the stuff that they've written through archives, and it checks out. Like, that's the hard part, is this stuff checks out. So I did an Instagram post about this, and actually I just reposted another one, and because it bothered me so much. So I want to read to you from this book. It is references. She puts all of her references in, so you can check. I'm not going to go over the references. I will put the book in the show notes if you want to pick it up. If you want to, it's online for free, y'all. So I will put the link so that you can click on it and read yourself. Because after she died, one of her requests was that her family would make it available for free online. So they did that. She has since passed away, but Anyway, it's funny because she was called a conspiracy theorist, and she's like, I am what? I'm looking at this firsthand, and people are like, well, you don't know what you're talking about, which is ironic. Anyway, so this entry is about 1928. And this entry took me down this very long rabbit hole. And I want to talk about the rabbit hole that I've gone down because I think it's interesting. So bear with me. Here we go. It says, and I'm trying to decide what the best, most abbreviated part would be. Mr. O.A. Nelson, retired educator, has supplied the vitally important documentation needed to support the link up between the textbooks and the Council on Foreign Relations. His letter was first printed in Young Parents Alert, Lake Elmos, Minnesota. His story is self-explanatory. Okay, so I'm going to read you part of the quote, not the whole quote because it's kind of long. I know from personal experience what I'm talking about. In December 1928, I was asked to talk to the American Association for the Advancement of Science on December 27th. Naive and inexperienced, I agreed. I had done some special work in teaching functional physics in high school. That was to be my topic. The next day, the 28th, Dr. Ziegler asked if I would attend a special educational meeting in his room after the AAAS meeting. We met from 10 o'clock p.m. until after 2:30 a.m. We were 13 at the meeting. Two things caused Dr. Ziegler, who is the chairman of the Educational Committee of the Council on Foreign Relations, to ask me to attend. My talk on the teaching of functional physics in high school, and the fact that I was a member of a group known as the Progressive Educators of America, which was nothing but a communist front. I thought the word progressive meant progress for better schools. 11 of those in attending the meeting were leaders in education. Doctors John Dewey and Edward Thorndike from Columbia University were there, and the others were of equal rank. Okay, I'm going to skip down a little bit. The sole work of this group was to destroy our schools. We spent 1 hour and 45 minutes discussing the so-called modern math. At one point, I objected because there was too much memory work, and math is reasoning, not memory. Dr. Ziegler turned to me and said, Nelson, wake up. That's what we want. A math that the pupils cannot apply to life situations when they get out of school. That math was not introduced until much later, as those present thought it was too radical a change. A milder course by Dr. Breckner was substituted, but it was also worthless as far as the understanding of math was concerned. The radical change was introduced in 1952. It was the one we are using now. So if pupils come out of high school now not knowing any math, don't blame them. The results are supposed to be worthless. Unquote. Okay, so I read that. And I was dumbfounded. And that's when, like I said, I wanted to verify what was said, and I did another deep dive. So I asked myself, I did an Instagram short on my new Instagram page about this. I was so bothered. I read that one night before I went to bed, and I was so bothered by it. I couldn't sleep a good chunk of the night. And the next morning, I went to my bookshelf, and I have a stack of really old books. Now, people keep asking me, how did I get these books? Did I just buy them? No, I did not buy them. I mean, I kind of sort of bought them, but several years ago, my husband's in real estate, and several years ago, he met a man that wanted to sell his house, and we were looking for some investment rentals because he's in real estate, and he, wanted to do rentals to build his portfolio and all of that stuff. And so the guy said, I'd love to sell it to you he was this very older gentleman, and he had no family. And he said, I want to sell you the house on one condition. I'm going to leave everything in the house except for this group of stuff because it's overwhelming to me and I don't want to deal with it. And the guy was kind of a hoarder. So I looked at that and I'm like, oh my gosh. And it literally took us months to clean this house out. And we had to get dumpsters. And I mean, there was so much garbage in the house. It was really overwhelming and I had to hire help to help me because it was so much stuff. And I continued to visit the guy. Like we'd go and see him in his retirement center after. My kids and I would take him stuff for holidays and whatnot because we knew he didn't have any family. So, but cleaning out the house was a monumental task and took us months. And he had this kind of like crawl space in the garage, and he had hundreds of books, and most of them were really gross and contemporary type books, but they were waterlogged and all this stuff. But there was this box of old books. I'll show you like this. And I took it home and then we put it in a storage unit and it sat there for a very long time. And then a few years ago, we condensed the storage unit and got rid of the rest of the stuff and sold, all that we could sell. And I brought home the box and I took the books and I put them on the bookshelf to never think about them until recently. And I thought to myself, we have never really looked at those books. Now I only have a little stack down here, but it was a box and I've got most of them upstairs and I've got some of them on my bookshelf here. So I go and I start going through the books and they were textbooks type. They were textbook type books from the 1800s. So I'm flipping through one of them. This is the one I was flipping through. It's called Ray's New Primary Arithmetic. And so I had gone through the box a few months ago, and then a couple months ago, I read that quote, and I thought to myself, okay, that means that everything from 1952 on has been tampered with. I know that there's a lot of homeschooling textbook type companies that have tried to change things and go back. A lot of the classical textbook type companies have done that, or I've heard. But I decided I wanted to look back and see with my own eyes, and compare what learning arithmetic and math was like back in the 1800s. This one was published in 1877 versus now, versus 1952. Because if what Dr. Nelson said is true, then that really sucks for kids. And that sucks for us as parents. Pardon my language. So I happened to still have two of my kids' textbooks from when they were in middle school and elementary school because I forgot to turn them in, and I found them and they've just been sitting on my bookshelf. So let me show you. For those that are listening, you can watch this on YouTube later. But here, this is an algebra book. And then this is a second grade math book. And so I'm flipping through and I'm starting to think about all this stuff. So this stuff is all going through my head, okay, how do they compare? And one of the reasons, so I'm going to pause that for a second because we'll talk about it here in a second. One of the reasons that I started having a really hard time continuing using curriculums is because I feel like so many curriculums are confusing. They're confusing for me as an adult, and there's a lot to them. And I am not a detail-oriented person. Some people love those details, But for a person who is not detail oriented like myself, and I see, the how to use this book is 3 chapters long, I'm like, why can't things be much simpler? I love the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown. By the way, I know Greg. We worked together when we were in college. Although he probably doesn't remember me, but that's okay. So in Essentialism, he's like, get rid of everything that's not essential, right? Get rid of everything that's not essential in your life and focus on the most important things, right? That's there. I just told you a whole book. It's really good, but that's a whole book in like a couple sentences. So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about essentialism, and I'm thinking about how we've overbooked ourselves. And then I look at the curriculums, and this isn't all of them, but a lot of them are, it just feels like a lot of extra. And in all the extra, we've lost simplicity. And I realized in my heart of hearts, like I as a human being, me personally, Janae Daniels, works best in a place of simplicity. I've realized when I have too much stuff, when I have all this extra stuff, it doesn't help my brain. I'm still working on being a minimalist. It probably will never happen in this lifetime. Come to grips with that. I find that if my schedules has too much stuff, I get overwhelmed. If I have too much stuff, I get overwhelmed. When I look at curriculums, if there's too much stuff, I get overwhelmed. And so I've asked myself, is there anything that's just simple? That's just straightforward? And so I went and picked up these books. Now, if you didn't know, the textbook industry is a billion with a B, $1 billion industry. And it's not exactly a monopoly, but there's roughly three big players, and they have all the accounts with all of the school districts and all the schools. I feel like in the homeschooling world, we've got our own set of curriculums. And I feel like the homeschooling curriculums actually are simpler than the public schooling ones, in my opinion, from what I've seen. But there's still a lot of extra. That's just my opinion. So and by the way, they change textbooks every few years. That's why I don't feel completely guilty that I never turned back in those textbooks, because I guarantee we've been homeschooling 5.5 years. They've probably gone through textbooks 2 more times since. So they have new textbooks anyway, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, so I picked up Ray's New Primary Arithmetic. And Joseph Ray started teaching arithmetic and mathematics when he was like 16 to his local schools. And then ultimately he ended up becoming a college professor, and I think he became a doctor too. Like, really fascinating guy. But he created these to help other people be able to teach kids. And he started these prior to compulsory education laws. And so as I'm going through these little books, and then I found you can actually order reprints of them through Mott Media, and I'll put links down below. You can also look at them online. There's free online resources, and I'll put the links down below so that you can check them out yourselves. You can look at them online, or if you want to purchase them, there's links to purchase them. They go all the way through 8th grade math, 8th grade arithmetic, and then they've got a series that goes into algebra. So I decide I'm going to try these with my kids. And even though Jacob is in geometry, finishing geometry, I start doing the lessons, and I'm trying to make YouTube videos teaching these lessons too. But it takes me time to do all this stuff because I'm still homeschooling, right? And I'm still podcasting. And y'all, they're simple. Like, these books are so simple. I also have an elementary grammar and composition book. This is Harvey's Elementary Grammar and Composition, which I'm finding as I'm reading through it. Let me read to you some of these things. Okay, grammar part 1. This is supposed to be for younger kids, like 5 to 7-ish. Or I'm sorry, it's like 5 to 9 years old. Grammar part 1, elementary course. Number 1, objects. The senses. We have 5 senses: seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, and smelling. When we feel, see, taste, or smell things, or hear sounds, we are said to perceive them. I drop a book upon the floor. A force called gravitation draws it towards the center of the earth. We cannot perceive this force, but we are conscious of it. That is, we know such force must exist. We are conscious of many other things that we cannot perceive, as love, hatred, joy, sorrow. All these things are called objects. What then is an object? Well, an object is anything we can perceive or of which we may be conscious. So when we think of objects. When we talk about objects. When we write about objects. When we talk or write, we use words to express our thoughts. What then is a word? A word is a syllable or a combination of syllables used in the expression of thought. And then questions. How many senses have we? Name them. Name some things that we can perceive. Name some things that we cannot perceive, but of which we may be conscious. What is an object? What is a word? And that is lesson 1. And then it goes into definitions of language, spoken language, written language, grammar, English grammar, like really, really, really simple. And I look at some of the grammar texts that there are available and how confusing they are. Again, not all grammar texts are confusing. But I'm just baffled at the simplicity of these books. Again, Harvey's Elementary Grammar and Composition. There's actually 2 books in this series. And if you go through both books, it goes through like 8th grade. And yet, as I was reading the second book, like online, because again, it's accessible online. I was dumbfounded at how much more advanced it is than a lot of our even college classes. Kate, my now 17 and 18-year-olds, when they were 14 and 15, took English Composition 1 and 2 from the local state college. And they aced the class. And I look at what they did there and what the second book teaches the kids. And these books, it's not that they're simpler, but they go into more depth. They give kids a deep foundation for grammar and structure and writing, and they're simple. And they're simple for me as a mom. Like my brain goes, oh yeah, this is not too much. This is simple. So that's how the Raise New Primary Arithmetic has been. So I started with Kara and Jacob. I bribed them, I'm not going to lie, to do YouTube videos with me and go through this. And so we've been counting this as math as we've been, they do it in real time. So like I showed, like we do the lesson and they do it in real time and I record them. And I did tell them, if you dress up like you're from Little House on the Prairie, we can go get an ice cream. And we did last night. We recorded a couple lessons and we went and got an ice cream. So I'm working on those videos. So the first video is out on my YouTube channel. The rest I'm working on because I want to go lesson by lesson, page by page. The links are in the show notes so people can read them for free online so that people can have other options. And I've been dumbfounded at how complicated we've made things and how it's no wonder that our illiteracy rate is so high in the US. It's no wonder that kids start to hate math. And when we're taught things that are meant to confuse, of course you're going to hate that. So I want to read this to you. This is Primary Arithmetic, Numbers and Figures, Lesson 1. Okay. So this is the note. It says, this lesson is intended to suggest how to teach the child to count objects and to express their number and figures. It comprises the first 10 numbers. The pupil points to each ball and says 1, 2, 3. So 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, etc. Then the teacher directs him to write the figures for 1, for 2, etc. Now, apparently this book is meant for ages 5 to 9, depending on when you start arithmetic. And then so the child points, and then they count. They say 1, and then they count, they point and count, and then they have to physically write the word and they write the number. Okay, so that's lesson 1. Super simple, right? It took us like 10 minutes to do the whole lesson with Kara and Jacob. Then lesson 2 is, in this lesson, the numbering of objects is extended to 40. A single column or less may constitute one exercise as seem best to the teacher. So again, they have to write the word 11, 12, all the way through 40, and then they write the number. And they count the objects. And so I have a jar of marbles, and I also have an abacus, which Jacob had to show me how to use an abacus because I had no idea. There is a way to use it almost like a calculator. It's kind of awesome. Anyway, so I've been simply delighted by the simplicity of these lessons. And then I was looking yesterday in the back of this book. Again, this is for ages like 5 to 9. This is one of the last lessons. And it also has Spencerian vertical penmanship, a discussion in the back of this as well. So review of the tables. Number 1, how many cents are in 5 dimes? In 3? In 7. How many pence in 40 farthings? I'm like, shoot, I don't know what a pence or a farthing is. Okay. How many eagles in $30? Also didn't know what an eagle was. Shillings and pounds, penny weights. Okay. So some of the stuff I'm like, okay, well, it's not that useful to me. How many quarts in 7 gallons? It's got, so it's really fascinating. It's got, long measure, 12 inches make 1 foot, marked FT. 3 feet make 1 yard, marked yard, YD. 5.5 yards or 16.5 feet make 1 rod, or RD. Anyway, it goes through weights and measures. It goes through the times tables. It goes through mental it starts to introduce mental arithmetic. And I have been dumbfounded by how simple it was. And yet I've been receiving responses from the short, like Instagram shorts and reels that I've done by longtime homeschoolers that are like, this is what we use to homeschool. And our kids are brilliant in arithmetic and in math. And I learned after homeschooling that arithmetic is a subset of math. So arithmetic is addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Math encompasses all the theory as well. So algebra is a maths, because somebody corrected me on that. They're like, it's maths. I'm like, oh, sorry. Okay. Anyway, and it goes on. Ray's new elementary. This is primary arithmetic. This is new elementary arithmetic. And they go all the way through mental arithmetic. And by the time these kids are done, they can do a lot in their head. Now, somebody posted to me, they said, why on earth, when we have AI, would they need to learn these things? And I think, well, that's a dumb thing. We have a car, and yet every day I still choose to walk. Why? Because I want to keep my muscles strong. I want my kids, and they know this. And for those that are new to this podcast, we are eclectic unschoolers. Most of the time in the day, my kids are engrossed in things that they're interested in. I mean, sometimes they're bored, and sometimes they beg, please, can we just play video games? And I'm like, no, you cannot. The end. But I do insist that they must know how to read well. They must know how to write well, and they must know how to do arithmetic to a point. They must know how to do arithmetic and then math to a point, I guess I should say. And I have been I've been dumbfounded by the grammar book and the grammar and composition book, by the spelling books, by the arithmetic books, even by the math books. Now I want to show you. Okay, so this is the algebra book. So yesterday I took this algebra book. Again, Jacob's done algebra. And I said, Jacob, I want you to look at this book, and then I want you to look at Josh's old book that I never returned to school. And maybe after this I will. We'll see. Which is harder? Like, which is more confusing to you? And he looked at him and he's like, Josh's old book is a lot more confusing. I'm like, interesting. So this is Elements of Algebra. This one was published, I think, let me see. Oh, shoot, I need my glasses on. 1866. This one was published 1866. Article 1 in algebra, quantities are represented by letters of the alphabet. Number 2, quantity is anything that is capable of increase or decrease as numbers, lines, space, time. So it starts with definitions. It does a few pages of definitions, and then it goes into actual lessons. But he's looking at it, I'm looking at it, and the simplicity baffles me. Okay, now let's look. Again, super simple. It's very, very straightforward, very direct. Early on, so O.A. Nelson talked about how he was concerned about the amount of memorization that they wanted to introduce. He was talking specifically of math, like in algebra, geometry, trig, calculus, not so much in arithmetic, because arithmetic requires foundational memorization, right? That we know the times tables, because we need that foundational knowledge to come quickly to our brains. The problem that he found, from what I could gather, was that the higher you get in actual maths, you don't really need to memorize all of the formulas. You don't need to memorize all of those things. It's not necessary, because it's not necessarily foundational knowledge. Whereas arithmetic is foundational knowledge for our brains, just like spelling and grammar are. They're foundational for our brains. And so it's important that we have those things memorized so that we have a muscle memory, and children don't have to put so much work into solving the multiplication when they have to do multi-step things, whether they're doing business math or whatever later. Okay. So memorization important in arithmetic, but he makes the argument it's not good or important in higher level in maths, in algebra, geometry. Some people say that's not higher level, but algebra, geometry, trig, calculus. Okay. I want to look at, so I read to you Ray's New Primary Arithmetic. Again, it starts with, this is a ball. Count the ball. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Now write the words. Right? So they're integrating all parts of the brain by doing this. They're physically writing the words. They are physically writing the number. They are physically counting. And he argues you need to use objects, not just pictures. The first lesson you use pictures. After that, you use objects. You use an abacus. You use marbles. You use, he says, ripped up pieces of board, kernels of corn. He's like, use beans, kernels of corn, whatever you have, use that. He wanted to teach children proper arithmetic. Okay, so then this is for second grade, which is age 7, 8. Okay, I'm just going to show you. It starts out and it goes first, everybody who wrote it, which took authors. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 authors, mathematicians, 2 ELL consultants, 2, 4, 6, 7 common course. 2 ELL consultants, 5 common core state standards reviewers. And then it gives digital resources and contents and topics and fluency, and it gives you all the scope of the sequence. And I'm looking here as a mom, like it hasn't even started yet, and we're pages in. Okay, so where do we start? Common Core standards, all the expectations of the kids, rather than just diving in, teaching the kids how to do the arithmetic. It's just, anyway, $1 billion industry, my friends, $1 billion industry. It goes through, and I'm not even sure where the lesson starts. Okay. Math Practices and Problem Solving Handbook. Math Practices, MP.1. Make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. There are good thinking habits for each of these math practices. My plan is to use counters as trucks. I can act out the problem. Good mathing. Okay, so there's all these little bubbles with people talking with cartoons. Good math thinkers know what the problem is about. They have a plan to solve it. They keep trying if they get stuck. Okay, so you get motivation. That's fine. A store, and then it goes, question. A store has some toy trucks. Mike buys 2 of the trucks. Now the store has 3 trucks. How many trucks did the store have at the start? Okay, let me read that again for you. A store has some trucks. Mike buys 2 of the trucks. Now the store has 3 trucks. How many trucks did the store have at the start? Okay, which leaves me with a lot of questions like, is Mike the store? Because Mike buys 2 of the trucks. Now the store has 3 trucks. How many trucks did the store have at the start? And then it has these red dots and some yellow dots, and it says 5 minus 2 is 3, 5 trucks. Oh, I see. Okay, so it's just confusing. Like, me as a mom, I'm sitting here reading this, and maybe you're like, oh, that was easy. But I'm like, wait a minute. The store has some trucks. Mike buys 2 of the trucks. Now the store has 3 trucks. How many trucks? Okay, so it's asking me to work. So I had to sit and think about it for a little bit. Like, what are we asking? Thinking habits. What do I need to find? What do I need to know? What's my plan for solving the problem? What else can I try if I get stuck? How can I check that my solution makes sense? Okay. So then it goes on. Reason abstractly and quantitatively. Okay, so this is funny because reasoning skills and so children don't start thinking abstractly until around age 8, 9. But this is supposed to be for as early as 7. Okay. So now it says, this little guy here says, I completed a part whole model. It shows how things in the problem are related. Good math thinkers know how to think about words and numbers to solve problems. Tony has 10 apples, 6 are red, the rest are green. How many apples are green? So I'm sitting here thinking, so this is, by the way, I'm at the beginning of the book. That looks like it's the first lesson. I'm already confused, and I'm the mom. Versus, we're going to start with counting. This is a number, like 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Vince Lombardi, the very famous football coach, was known to have gone every time he'd start a new season. This is the story. Is he would go and with the team, with the NFL team that he was coaching, would go, and I guess it was an NFL team. Maybe it was a college team. I don't know, because I'm not a big football fan. So I know, shocker, I'm in Colorado and the Broncos, and my husband loves them. I don't really care. Okay, so the first thing he'd do is he'd go with the football players. These players have played for years. They know this game. The first thing that Vince Lombardi would do is he would say, this is a football. And then he would explain all of the basics of the game from the very foundation. This is a football. This is a field. There are 100 yards on the field. And the players would ask, why do you do this? He goes, because you need to remember the foundational things before you work on everything else. Oh, I want to show you this too. Okay, like I said, this is kind of all over the place, but it's been on my heart and mind, so bear with me. Big ideas. This is big ideas, modeling real life, 8th grade. And it goes through from meeting math proficiencies, equations. Okay, it gives me the table of contents. And then training for a half marathon. You're to watch a STEAM video about half marathon and target heart rates. This is chapter 1, equations. And here's the table. And then it says chapter, getting ready for the chapter. Work with a partner, use algebra tiles to model and solve each equation. And then it has little pictures. And then you're supposed to follow the pictures. Model the equation x plus 3 equals negative 3. Add 3 minus 1 tiles to each side. Remove the 0 pairs from each side. Write the solution of the equation. Anyway, it's confusing. Okay. And maybe some of you are like, no, that's not confusing to me. For me, as a theater major, I look at that and go, this is confusing. I look at this book, which is the same level. These two books are the same level. And it starts with, in algebra, quantities are represented by letters of the alphabet. That's how it starts. None of this, look at these negative tiles, and we're going to start with a half marathon, and then you're going to watch a video about some half marathon, and then you're supposed to figure out the tiles. Like, it's so confusing, and I feel bad for those of you who are in public school listening to this. If your children are struggling in math, it's not their fault. It's actually not their teacher's fault either, because their teachers have to work with the textbooks that they're given. They're required to, and that's what they have. And I've heard math teachers complain up the yin-yang about it. Remember, I still have friends that are teaching in public school, and they're like, it's crap. And then we get Common Core math, and some people love it. I get that. That's fine. But what I'm saying is, in the 1800s, it was a lot easier how they taught the kids, and they're a lot smarter than we are today, in my opinion. I talked to my husband's grandmother, who is 102 years old, and the lady is freaking brilliant, and yet she never went to college. She ended up traveling around as a military wife. She worked as a Rosie the Riveter, and this is what she grew up on. These kinds of books. So my point is, if you're struggling and you need curriculums for math and reading, go back to the past. Like, look up, again, I'm going to put links in if you want to have their free online resources, or if you want to purchase them, there's companies that reproduce them. And by the way, I bought the reproductions, and they don't alter them except for here and there with like little tweaky things. Because somebody did ask me that, like, well, what if they've changed them? I have original copies. And for pieces that I've been missing, like books that I've been missing, I've actually sought them out, purchased them. So I've got original copies of stuff. Y'all, education is not supposed to be so confusing. It is not supposed to be so hard. It is supposed to be simple. Now, are there times that things become challenging and we have to use our brains and use that muscle? Yes. But the foundational things are not supposed to be so confusing. They're meant to be simple. And so if we as parents can teach and introduce these things in a simple way, number one, our kids won't hate them. And number two, they will grow and learn the way that they need to. That's my point. It took 50 minutes for me to talk about this, but it's been on my mind. Like, I am making videos using these books because I've been so dumbfounded at how simple they are compared to the crap that we have in the public school system. Because that's what it is. It is pure, sheer garbage. There, that's my 2 cents for what it's worth, if anyone's still listening, which you may not be. As I've mentioned several times, the links to get these books, to get them online for free, like you can look at them, I'll include in the show notes. So they're there for you. My friends, there, I'm done with my rant. This is what I'm using with my kids currently. I did interview somebody on grammar as well a couple weeks ago, and I'm trying out her curriculum to see She also likes simplicity. I appreciate the curriculums that are simple because my brain just doesn't work with complexity and extra, if that makes sense. Like our brains are complex, right? But I think it was Albert Einstein that said something about as a matter of fact, let me look it up. The Albert Einstein quote. Genius, this is Albert Einstein. Genius is making complex ideas simple, not making simple ideas complex. And that is what the public school system has done. That's what they've done. I'm not talking about the teachers. I'm talking about the system and the textbook companies. They have taken simple ideas and they've made them complex. And it's not fair to the kids. It's not fair to the teachers. And you and I, being out of the system, can do something different. We can take those complex ideas and make them simple by using resources that are meant to teach, not to confuse. All right, my friends, that's it. I'm hopping off my soapbox. You are doing so much better than you think you are. You got this. We'll talk next week. And by the way, next week I have Dr. I gotta look it up. Dr. Teresa Lyons coming on talking about autism. She kind of blew my mind. She's kind of brilliant and she talks all about autism. So that's next week. So be sure that you tune in next week. With that, you got this. We'll talk next week.